What we are celebrating is the work that has been done by all those that have fought for workers' rights up to this year. The fight for workers' rights continues, both from outside government and inside government when you have socialist administrations, but it all really started in Chicago over 100 years ago, where the Chicago martyrs demonstrated, and some of them, because they're called martyrs, paid with their lives, because they were insisting on working an 8-hour day and no more, having 8 hours to work, 8 hours to rest, and 8 hours of leisure. It's a good way for young people to learn that 8 times table, because those 3 8s make the 24 hours of the day. That was the sort of beginning of the fight for rights of people at work. Slavery had been abolished, people were paid for their work, but they had no more rights at work. In the world in which we live today, we take so much for granted. We think it is absolutely right that Gibraltar should align itself with the rest of the European nations and actually stop on the 1st of May to commemorate and celebrate exactly that.
You will have seen Unite the Union's manifesto for tomorrow. They aim to bring up 2 essential issues. One of them is in your gift, a public sector pay deal to reflect the rising costs of living and inflation. So where are we on that?
Yes, it is in my gift as Minister for Finance, but my gift can only go as far as the public finances go, because the other thing that is a fundamental manifesto commitment of the GSLP Liberals, it'd be a commitment of the GSLP since Joe Bassano first took power in 1988, is that we will never spend more in any financial year than our income permits us to do. That's the golden rule. You won't pay recurrent expenditure which exceeds your recurrent income. Now, salaries in the public sector are part of what we call the recurrent expenditure, the money that we spend every year. If we put those salaries up, then this year and every year going forward, because we never put salaries down, we will have a pay bill which will be that much. So what I've done now for a number of years since the pandemic is I've invited Unite the Union, NASUWT and the GGCA to come together with me in a small committee ahead of the appropriation debate. I share with them confidentially what the numbers that we are seeing are, what will be the surplus for the year gone by, what we think the surplus will be if there is to be one for future years, if there is a deficit, or what we think the deficit would be, and to see how then we would all agree it makes sense that public sector salaries should go up, trying to achieve the objective of always keeping public sector salaries ahead of inflation, but never falling into the trap of exceeding recurrent income. Because if we do, what we are doing in effect is those of us who work in the public sector, the politicians included, the broadcasters included, we're all in the wider public sector, is we are asking our children to give us a loan, because we'd have to pay for that in the future, to pay for our salaries today.
One thing that you mentioned in your press release as part of the litany of things that you've delivered for the worker is minimum wage increases on an annual basis. So I know that you don't like to reveal what's in the budget that's coming up, but I imagine that at least that's something that you can commit to if you say that you've done it every year?
Well, look, you can never take anything for granted because you have to ensure that the numbers tally, and you have to look in the context of minimum wages at what the cost of doing business in Gibraltar is as well, because businesses need to be able to operate successfully in Gibraltar in order to create economic activity, which is very good for workers too, because that's where their jobs are if they're not in the public sector. Getting that balance right is something that I think we've demonstrated we can do year after year. We even put up the minimum wage in the years around COVID. So, of course, you can't take nothing for granted, but you can take for granted that we will be working very hard to ensure that, if possible, we will be giving an increase to the minimum wage so that those that are lowest paid in our community also feel the benefit of Gibraltar's economy performing well. I'm not talking about the public finances now, I'm talking about the economy. That's different, that's everything that's happening in Gibraltar. People sometimes confuse the two, and it's very important that in the analysis that we do there of the economic statistics, we get the increase in the minimum wage right. But I shall be doing my damnedest, and I've worked every day that I have been in this office to ensure that those that earn the least in our community tomorrow will earn more.